The wooden floorboards creaked beneath Emma's feet as she stormed into the rustic countryside retreat, her heart pounding like a war drum. The betrayal had unfolded mere moments ago, a tableau of deceit that still burned vividly behind her eyes. Mark, her lover of 2 years, entwined in a whispered argument with her own sister, Lily, their silhouettes stark against the amber glow of the fading sun. The air crackled with unresolved tension, each breath she took heavy with the weight of the unspoken truths hanging between them. Emma's movements were a blur of fury and disbelief, her hands trembling as she slammed the door behind her, seeking solitude. But the echo of their voices lingered like a haunting refrain, pushing her to confront the painful reality she could no longer ignore. How could you, her heart screamed, even as her throat refused to utter the words aloud. In her silence lay a shattered trust, each piece reflecting the love she thought was unbreakable. Yet, within the shards of her heartbreak, a revelation glimmered, demanding to be unearthed. Love had twisted into betrayal, and nothing would ever be the same again. Chapter 1. The Invitation. The late afternoon sun cascaded through Emma's kitchen window, painting golden stripes across the oak table where she sat, its warmth a soothing balm against the chill of early autumn. Her fingers danced over the invitation, its creamy envelope whispering of elegance and formality that felt at once thrilling and ominous. She couldn't help but smile as she traced the embossed letters spelling out her mother's name, the slight curl at the end of each stroke reminiscent of the way her mother spoke, soft, poised, yet with an edge that hinted at unspoken truths. Emma tucked a loose strand of auburn hair behind her ear, her heart fluttering with anticipation. She had imagined this moment for weeks now, the moment when her worlds would collide. Introducing Mark to her family felt like opening a door to a room filled with possibilities. He was kind and witty, with a warmth that spread like wildfire, igniting every room he entered. She could already picture his easy laughter mingling with the crackling of the fireplace at her parents' countryside retreat, a place of rustic charm that promised serenity, but often delivered something else entirely. "I can't wait for you to meet them," Emma had told Mark, her voice bubbling with enthusiasm as she poured their morning coffee. "It's going to be perfect. Just you wait." Mark had chuckled, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his chin resting atop her head. "I'm sure it will be," he murmured, his breath teasing the sensitive skin of her neck. Yet in his eyes there was a flicker of hesitation, fleeting, almost imperceptible, but enough to make her wonder. As the day wore on, Emma found herself glancing repeatedly at the invitation, its presence both a comfort and a challenge. The thought of family dinners always stirred a mix of emotions in her, a cocktail of nostalgia and dread. Her family was a tapestry of love and secrets, of laughter that sometimes masked underlying tensions. Her sister Lily, for instance, with her sharp wit and sharper silences, had recently grown more distant, their once easy camaraderie replaced by something akin to guardedness. Emma sighed, her excitement tinged with a shadow of apprehension. She wanted this dinner to be a bridge, not a battlefield. As she slipped the invitation back into its envelope, she resolved to focus on the positives, her family's shared love of music, the way her father always carved the turkey with a flourish, and the stories that would inevitably pour forth, each thread weaving them closer together. Yet, as she stood, the cool air from the window brushing against her skin, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the dinner would be more than just an introduction. It would be a revelation. With a quiet determination, she picked up her phone, her fingers hovering over Mark's name. She was about to invite him on a journey that promised joy, but also the unveiling of truths she had yet to uncover. And as she pressed call, she knew deep down that nothing would be the same. The countryside awaited with all its beauty and secrets, and a family dinner that would change everything. Chapter 2. A Warm Welcome. The countryside unfurled before them, like an artist's canvas, each stroke of rolling hills and patches of wildflowers whispering promises of tranquility. As the car wound its way through narrow lanes framed by ancient oaks, Emma felt her chest tighten with a cocktail of anticipation and nostalgia. Beside her, Mark's fingers drummed lightly on the steering wheel, his gaze scanning the landscape with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "It's beautiful here," he remarked, the words carrying a warmth that chased away the last of Emma's lingering doubts. She smiled, her own thoughts a whirl of memories. Summer picnics and winter firesides, laughter echoing through the years. As they approached the retreat, the rustic stone cottage stood steadfast against the backdrop of the setting sun, its windows aglow with the promise of welcome. Emma's heart skipped a beat as she spotted her family gathered on the porch, their silhouettes etched against the fading light. Her mother, elegant as ever, descended the steps with arms wide open, enveloping Emma in a hug that spoke of comfort and familiarity. "Emma, my darling," she murmured, pulling back to study her daughter with fond eyes. "And you must be Mark," she added, extending a hand towards him. He took it, his smile as genuine as the autumn breeze. "It's lovely to finally meet you," he said, his voice steady, the flicker of unease from earlier replaced by genuine warmth. Introductions flowed easily, the air buzzing with chatter and shared stories. Emma's father, with his booming laugh and playful anecdotes, immediately took to Mark, while her brother, Sam, clapped him on the back with a grin that promised camaraderie. Yet as they moved inside, the warmth of the gathering took on a different hue. Emma's sister, Lily, lingered in the doorway, her presence a shadow flickering at the edge of Emma's awareness. There was a distance in Lily's eyes, a guardedness that hadn't been there before, and it settled over Emma like a cool mist. "Lily," Emma called, her voice laced with an earnestness she couldn't quite mask. But Lily only offered a terse smile, her gaze slipping past Emma to lock briefly with Mark's. An unreadable exchange flickered between them, gone almost as soon as it had appeared, leaving Emma with a sense of something unspoken. "It's good to see you," Lily said finally, her voice smooth, yet lacking the warmth Emma longed for. As they embraced, the hug felt more like a formality than a reunion, and Emma couldn't help but wonder what lay beneath her sister's composed facade. The evening unfolded with a rhythm familiar yet altered. Laughter danced through the rooms, buoyed by the clinking of glasses and the aroma of a meal lovingly prepared. Yet beneath the surface, Emma sensed an undercurrent, the kind that shifts the tides ever so slightly, but inevitably. As the night slipped towards the promise of stars, Emma found herself by the window, the cool glass grounding her amidst the whirlwind of emotions. Mark joined her, his presence a quiet anchor. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low, intimate. She nodded, though her mind lingered on the fleeting exchange between Mark and Lily. "It's just a lot," she admitted, nestling closer to him. His arm wrapped around her, a silent promise of support, yet Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was unraveling, thread by thread. The countryside retreat had welcomed them with open arms. It had seemed to hold its own secrets, ones that Emma feared were only beginning to surface. Chapter 3. Uneasy Undercurrents. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of lavender and rose as the pre-dinner gathering unfolded. Inside the rustic confines of Emma's family retreat, the air buzzed with the warmth of reunion, yet an undercurrent of unease seemed to ripple through the room. Emma, nestled on the sofa, watched Mark and Lily with a careful eye, their interactions tinged with a tension she couldn't quite place. Lily's laugh, once a melody of genuine joy, now carried an edge, cutting through the conversations with an unsettling sharpness. "Remember that time at the lake, Mark?" Lily's voice was light, playful even, but her eyes held a challenge. "You were quite the daredevil." Mark, caught mid-sip of his drink, paused, his smile faltering for the briefest moment. "Ah, those were the days," he replied, his tone easy, yet his gaze flicked briefly to Emma, as if seeking her reassurance. Emma's heart stuttered, caught between the familiarity of Lily's teasing and the unfamiliar tension that shadowed their words. She forced a smile, trying to shake the disquiet that threatened to settle. "I didn't know you were such a thrill-seeker," she said, nudging Mark with her shoulder. "There's a lot you don't know about Mark," Lily interjected, her voice smooth, yet layered with an implication that hung in the air like a discordant note. Emma's laughter felt hollow, an attempt to bridge the growing chasm. "Well, I'm still learning," she replied, her eyes searching Lily's face, hoping to find a trace of the sister she once knew. But Lily's expression remained inscrutable, her smile tight as she took a sip from her glass, eyes glinting with something Emma couldn't decipher. It was a look that seemed to hold secrets, echoing the silent whispers of the countryside outside. As the room swirled with chatter and the clinking of glasses, Emma drifted towards the window, the cool night air seeping through the cracks, grounding her in its chill. She could feel the weight of her family's stories layered in the walls, their love mingling with unspoken truths. Mark joined her, his presence a comforting solidity amidst her swirling thoughts. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice a gentle murmur. She nodded, though the unease lingered like a shadow. "Lily seems different," Emma ventured, her voice low, hesitant. Mark's gaze remained steady, yet there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Guilt, perhaps? Or was it merely her imagination? "It's been a while since you've seen each other," he offered, a hand slipping into hers, the gesture intimate, reassuring. Emma leaned into him, seeking warmth and clarity in his embrace. Yet the cryptic comments, the fleeting glances, each thread wove a tapestry of doubt that wrapped around her, unfamiliar and unsettling. The evening continued, conversations weaving through the spaces of their shared history. Yet, beneath the surface, the uneasy undercurrents persisted, whispering of secrets unspoken, truths yet to be uncovered. As the stars began to pepper the sky, Emma knew that this was only the beginning. The countryside, with its serene facade, held more than just the echoes of her past. It whispered of revelations that hovered just beyond her grasp. Chapter 4. The First Crack. The clinking of silverware echoed through the dining room, a rhythmic backdrop to the unfolding drama at the table. Emma sat beside Mark, her hand occasionally brushing his in a gesture of reassurance, though her heart felt less certain. Her family surrounded her, their faces familiar yet tinged with the tension that had been brewing since the evening began. Lily was seated across from them, a vision of composed elegance, her eyes sharp and attentive, darting between Emma and Mark with an intensity that seemed to pierce through the chatter. The table was lightened with dishes, the aroma of rosemary and roasted vegetables mingling with the scent of unease. Emma took a breath, trying to quell the anxiety that bubbled beneath her ribs. "This is delicious, Mom," she said, aiming for lightness, her voice just a touch too bright. Her mother smiled, warmth tempered by concern. "Thank you, dear. It's nice to have everyone together." Lily set her fork down, with deliberate care, her gaze fixed on Mark. "So might tell us more about your work. I hear it keeps you busy." Mark shifted in his seat, his easygoing demeanor faltering under the weight of her words. "It's been demanding lately, but I enjoy the challenge," he replied, his voice measured. Lily's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I bet you do, always juggling, aren't you?" The room grew still, the hum of conversation fading into an expectant silence. Emma's grip on her napkin tightened, her pulse quickening. "Juggling, what do you mean?" Lily leaned back, her posture relaxed, but her eyes unwavering. "Oh, just that Mark seems to have a knack for keeping multiple things in the air." The words hung in the air, a subtle accusation wrapped in conversational ease. Emma felt a cold wave wash over her, the implication slicing through her composure. "Lily, what are you trying to say?" Mark glanced at Emma, his expression a mixture of apprehension and defiance. "Lily, this isn't the time," he warned, his voice low. But Lily's resolve was unyielding, her gaze steady. "I think it's exactly the time Emma deserves to know." Emma's mind raced, her thoughts a tangle of disbelief and rising fear. "Know what?" she demanded, her voice cracking like a fragile veneer. The room held its breath, the tension palpable, as Lily spoke with quiet intensity. "Emma, Mark and I, we've been seeing each other." The world seemed to tilt, Emma's heart pounding in her chest as the words sank in. She looked at Mark, searching his face for denial, for anything that would contradict the reality crashing down around her. Mark's silence was damning. He met her gaze, eyes pleading for understanding, yet offering no refuge from the truth. "Emma, he began, but the words faltered, drowned by the tidal wave of betrayal that surged through her. Emma stood abruptly, the scrape of her chair loud in the stunned quiet of the room. "How could you?" she whispered, her voice raw with hurt. Around them, the remnants of dinner lay forgotten, the evening's warmth extinguished by the cold light of revelation. Emma felt the eyes of her family upon her, their shock and sympathy a chorus of silent witness. Turning away from the table, she fled to the sanctuary of the night, the cool air a balm against the heat of her tears. Behind her, the murmur of voices, the sound of a world she no longer recognized, faded into the distance. The first crack had appeared, jagged and irrevocable, a fissure that split her life into before and after. As the stars watched silently from above, Emma stood alone, her heart aching with the knowledge that everything had changed. Chapter 5. A Tense Alliance. The moon hung low over the countryside, casting a gentle glow across the fields as Emma found herself standing on the porch, the cool night air wrapping around her like a shroud. She could still hear the muffled voices from the dining room, the echo of her family's disbelief, a distant hum against the cicada's song. Her heart felt like shattered glass, each jagged piece aching with betrayal. She needed answers, needed to confront the one person who could make sense of the chaos swirling within her. Resolute, she turned back inside, her footsteps purposeful as she made her way to the small sitting room where Lily had retreated. She found her sister standing by the window, silhouetted against the pale light, her posture tense yet resigned. "You knew," Emma said softly, her voice tinged with a mix of accusation and longing for an explanation that might mend her fractured heart. Lily turned, her eyes meeting Emma's with a heaviness that spoke of her own turmoil. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she admitted, the words tumbling out with raw honesty. Emma's breath hitched, tears threatening to spill over. "Why, Lily? Why didn't you tell me?" Lily's expression crumpled, the mask of composure slipping away to reveal the guilt and regret etched deeply into her features. I wanted to, but I was scared of losing you, Emma." The sincerity in Lily's voice was a balm to Emma's wounded heart, even as it deepened the ache of betrayal. "You are my sister. You are my sister. How could you think this would keep us apart?" Emma's voice broke, her words a plea for understanding. Lily stepped forward, her hand reaching out tentatively, as if afraid to break the fragile truce the confession had forged. "I made a mistake, Emma, a terrible mistake, I thought. I thought it was just a fling, something that would pass, but then I realized how much I was hurting you." Her voice shook, tears shimmering in her eyes. "I was wrong, so wrong." Emma felt the warmth of Lily's hand close around hers, and in that touch, she found a flicker of the bond they'd shared since childhood. It was tarnished, yes, but not beyond repair. "I don't know how to feel right now," Emma confessed, her voice small in the vastness of her emotions. "You don't have to decide anything tonight," Lily replied, her tone gentle, soothing. "But please, know that I'm here whatever happens. I want to be here for you." The sincerity in Lily's voice was a lifeline, pulling Emma back from the edge of despair. "I want to believe you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying the weight of her burgeoning hope. They stood together, the silence filled not with the echoes of betrayal, but with the quiet promise of reconciliation. In that moment, the house seemed to breathe with them, the air lighter, the shadows less daunting. Emma took a deep breath, feeling the tentative beginnings of forgiveness bloom within her. "We have a lot to talk about," she said, her voice gaining strength. Lily nodded, her grip on Emma's hand firm and reassuring. "And we will together." In the darkness, they found a semblance of light, a shared determination to rebuild what had been broken. As Emma looked at her sister, she saw not just the mistakes but the willingness to mend them, and it was enough to begin the healing. The night stretched on, but the path forward, though uncertain, was one they would walk side by side. Chapter 6. The Passionate Argument. The sitting room was dimly lit, the fire in the hearth casting flickering shadows that danced against the walls. Emma stood in the doorway, her eyes fixed on Mark, who sat slumped in a chair, his face partially obscured by his hand. The air between them felt charged, a storm waiting to break. "We need to talk," Emma said, her voice steady but laced with the tremor of emotion she fought to control. Mark looked up, his eyes weary, as if he carried the weight of the world. "Emma, I'm so sorry," he began, but she cut him off with a sharp gesture. Sorry doesn't cut it, Mark, not after everything. Her voice rose, carrying the raw edge of her hurt and anger. How could you, with Lily of all people? Mark stood, his movements slow, deliberate. I never meant for any of this to happen, he said, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. Emma crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. Then why did it? Why did you let it happen? He hesitated, the silence stretching between them, heavy with unspoken truths. I was confused, he admitted finally, his voice breaking as he spoke. I thought it was just a moment, a lapse, but then it spiraled, and I didn't know how to stop it. Her eyes filled with tears, Emma shook her head, disbelief mingling with despair. A lapse, you call betraying me a lapse? Mark stepped forward, reaching out, but Emma recoiled, the space between them a chasm of broken trust. Emma, please, he implored, his voice a whisper of desperation. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, yet echoing with the finality of a verdict. You did. The room seemed to hold its breath, the only sound the crackling of the fire, as Emma's composure crumbled, her tears flowing freely now. I loved you, Mark, I trusted you, she choked, her words punctuated by the sobs she could no longer suppress. Mark's own eyes glistened, the reality of what he'd done crashing down around him. I know, he said, his voice thick with regret. And I've ruined everything. Emma's heart ached with the weight of his admission, the finality of it all settling over her like a cold mist. Is there anything left to save? She asked, her voice fragile, as if the answer might shatter her completely. Mark hesitated, his silence speaking louder than words. Finally he shook his head, a single tear trailing down his cheek. I don't know, he confessed, the admission a nice edge of truth. With that, Emma turned away, her decision made in the quiet resolve that followed. I need time, Mark, time to figure out what all of this means for us, for me. He nodded, understanding in his eyes mingled with the sorrow of realization. I wish things were different, he said softly. So do I, Emma replied, her voice gentle, yet firm with the knowledge that some things, once broken, might never be the same. As she left the room, the weight of the conversation lingered, but with it came a sense of clarity, a path forward, even if it was shrouded in uncertainty. The night was long, but Emma knew that dawn would bring with it the promise of a new beginning, one she was determined to face with strength and grace. Chapter 7. Shattered Reflections. The country air was imbued with a crispness that sharpened everything it touched, from the verdant hills stretching into the horizon to the wild flowers that dotted the landscape like spilled jewels. Emma walked among them, her footsteps a soft whisper against the earth, each step a tentative exploration of her own fragmented heart. Here, away from the tangled web of betrayal, the silence was a balm, inviting her to unravel her thoughts without interruption. She found a secluded spot by the lake, the water mirroring the sky's tumultuous dance of clouds. Emma settled onto a weathered bench, its wood cool and familiar beneath her fingertips. The surface of the lake was deceptively calm, a stark contrast to the storm within her. She allowed herself a moment to simply breathe, the air filling her lungs with a clarity she desperately sought. The betrayal had left a mark, a jagged scar etched across her sense of self-worth. She had always prided herself on her intuition, her ability to read people and situations with a keen eye. Yet Mark's deceit had blindsided her, unraveling her trust in herself as much as in him. Why hadn't she seen the signs? What was it about her that had allowed such a fracture to occur? These questions spiraled in her mind, a relentless tide of self-doubt threatening to pull her under. Her eyes traced the ripples on the lake, each one a reminder of how fragile peace could be, how easily it could be shattered by the smallest disturbance. Yet, amid the chaos, there was an unexpected beauty in the patterns they created, a testament to resilience and change. Emma closed her eyes, letting the sounds of nature envelop her. The rustle of leaves in the breeze, the distant call of a bird, the gentle lapping of water against the shore. All these sounds wove a tapestry of tranquility that began to stitch together the frayed edges of her spirit. In this solitude, she found space to contemplate not just the loss, but also the resilience that lay within her. The memory of her confrontation with Mark was still raw, yet here, in the embrace of the countryside, it felt like a story belonging to someone else, a distant echo rather than a fresh wound. She had loved him, yes, and perhaps she always would in some way, but here, she realized love was not the sum of her worth. Her value was intrinsic, untouched by betrayal or pain. With this revelation came a fragile sense of peace. It was not a sweeping realization, but rather a gentle acceptance, a whisper in the wind urging her to let go of the burdens she had carried for too long. Nature, in its unyielding cycles, reminded her that every ending harbors the seed of a beginning, and Emma felt the first stirrings of hope unfurl within her. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden glow across the landscape, Emma rose from the bench, her steps lighter than before. She turned back towards the path leading home, her heart still tender, but no longer heavy with despair. There would be conversations to have, bridges to rebuild, and futures to reimagine, but for now, she allowed herself to simply be, whole in her brokenness, strong in her vulnerability. In the quietude of her retreat, Emma had found a reflection not of what was lost, but of what remained, her spirit undiminished, ready to embrace the dawn of whatever lay ahead. And with each step forward, she carried with her the certainty that she was enough, just as she was. Chapter 8. A New Beginning. The morning air was crisp, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and the promise of a new day. Emma stood at the edge of the garden, her eyes tracing the familiar contours of the landscape that had become her sanctuary. The sun's first light painted everything in soft hues, a gentle reminder that even after the darkest nights, dawn would always return. Emma inhaled deeply, feeling the coolness of the air invigorate her senses. Today was different. Today marked the beginning of a path she had chosen for herself, untethered from the shadow of betrayal that had once loomed so large in her life. She turned back towards the house, her heart steady, a quiet confidence anchoring her steps. Inside, the kitchen was filled with the comforting clatter of breakfast preparations. Lily stood at the stove, her movements fluid and practiced, a familiar sight that now carried a renewed sense of camaraderie. Emma paused in the doorway, watching her sister with a fondness that surprised her with its intensity. "You're up early," Lily remarked, glancing over her shoulder with a tentative smile. Emma returned the smile, stepping closer. "Couldn't sleep, too much on my mind," she admitted, her voice soft yet unwavering. Lily nodded, understanding the weight of Emma's words without needing elaboration. "I'm glad you're here, Emma, truly," she said, her voice carrying a sincerity that warmed the room. "Me too," Emma replied, a simple truth that resonated deeply within her. "I've missed this us." A silence settled between them, comfortable and healing, as they moved about the kitchen, their actions a silent choreography that spoke of years spent together. With each shared glance and quiet word, the fractures in their relationship mended, a testament to the resilience of sisterhood. As they sat down to breakfast, Emma felt a sense of peace settle over her. The past few days had been a whirlwind of revelations and emotions, but here, in this moment, she found something precious, a connection with Lily that was stronger than ever before. "I was thinking," Emma began, her gaze steady on Lily's, "about what comes next for us for me." Lily set her fork down, giving Emma her full attention. "Anne?" "I need to move forward," Emma said, each word a step towards freedom. "And part of that means letting go of Mark." Lily nodded slowly, her expression one of understanding and support. "You deserve to be happy, Emma, to find someone who values you, who sees you the way you truly are." Emma smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. "I know, and I think for now, I need to focus on being that person for myself." The conversation turned lighter as they spoke of plans and dreams, painting a picture of a future that felt both exciting and attainable. Emma's decision to leave Mark behind wasn't just about ending a chapter. It was about beginning a journey of self-discovery and self-love. Later, as the day unfolded, Emma found herself drawn back to the lake. This time, she wasn't seeking solace, but rather embracing the serenity it offered, a reflection of the calm within her. The water shimmered under the sun, a mirror to her own transformation. Standing there, Emma felt a profound gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this point. She understood now that her worth was not tied to any one person or relationship. It was a part of her, inherent and unshakable. With a final look at the lake, Emma turned back towards the house, ready to face whatever lay ahead. She walked with purpose.